Give me a couple of minutes. I'll explain why the audio didn't work. I'll explain kind of what I said.
The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, sorry for all the audio problems there. We are back, and this is the Yaron Brook Show on a Saturday night. Thank you all for joining me, and hope you've enjoyed the shows I've done the last couple of weeks. Seems like it. Listenership is up, subscriptions are up. Everything's doing really well. I hope. Yeah, so just to remind you, right? Just to remind you, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to support the show. And we'll be doing a show today. We'll also be doing a show tomorrow, probably in the afternoon tomorrow. And we'll keep these going for while I have time, particularly in the weekend. There seems to be more time in the weekend. So I had a good day today. I hope you guys are having good days as well. I went out to dinner. That's cool. Going out to dinner. That's kind of, getting used to it, right? New. Went to a restaurant kind of out in the countryside in Puerto Rico, which was really nice. Really different. Doesn't usually, we haven't been out there. This is the first time out there. Really good food. Sat outside. Really nice view. Just really cool and nice. And I'm looking forward. The next week, things are going to be coming back to normal. More and more in Puerto Rico. Restaurants are opening up, 50% capacity. They're doing away with a stupid curfew at 7 o'clock. It's going to be now 10 o'clock. I never go outside after 10. Anyway, so it's it's getting back to normal. I hope it's getting back to normal where you are. And things are getting semi back. And then July 3rd, I'm flying to California. I'm going to Orange County. So the background that you see here is going to change. I'm going to do it from my office in California, from my home in California. Probably spend all of July and August in California. Get away a little bit from the heat and humidity, primarily the humidity here in Puerto Rico. And, it's good not to be here during hurricane season just in case. So instead, we'll be in California for fire season. We'll see how that goes. So California should be cool. That should be interesting. And let's see. What else? Oh, yeah. And then September, October, who knows? Should start traveling during that period. I've got a trip to Europe in October planned. Maybe a trip to Europe in September, although I have a suspicion that's going to be canceled, but we will see. We will see. So, Nick remembers my old California office, the Living Objectivism podcast. Yes, you will get that scenery. I need to buy a computer for my California office. I gave my computer to my son, so I need to get a computer. I need to get new monitors. I need to get myself set up in California. I don't really have a setup. By the way, the reason we just had problems was I just got a new computer today. I got a Mac Mini, top of the line, everything. Now I'm starting to regret I didn't get 32 megabytes of RAM. I only got 16. I'm starting to worry 16 is not going to be enough for all these podcasts, but we will see. All these video podcasts. I don't know. I guess if it turns out not to be enough, we'll have to upgrade it to 32. But I did get a Mac Mini to replace my old Mac that was causing us problems. Stuff was shutting down, if you remember, freezing. Hopefully, that is now history, and that is gone, and that it stops, and we won't have it anymore, right? Hopefully, this computer everything will be smooth sailing for now. It is, I've noticed, a little loud. I liked the old computer. Had no... everything was super quiet. It cooled really nicely, and it was really, really. It was good. So we'll see. We'll see if we'll see how this is handled. But I don't want to, if somebody has a idea of how I can get my Mac Mini upgraded with 32 RAMs, let me know. I got it with 16. I don't want to do it myself because I'll mess it up. But if you think I can take it in somewhere and get it fixed, let me know if that's doable. Right? So it's anyway. I think in California I'll run the show off of a MacBook Air. I'll get the top of the line MacBook Air with lots of memory, and we'll see if I can run it off of there. All right. Well, anyway, that's where we are logistically. Everything's. Oh, anyway, so the settings weren't quite up to date. Everything has to be updated in terms of the settings, and hopefully things are going to run smoothly now. Given that I think I've got all the settings right now. So updated everything. I thought I had before. Anyway, well, we'll see. We will see. Whoops. No, I don't want to do that. Okay. What is next? I was wondering. I was trying to think of a positive topic to do today. I'm kind of sick of all these negativity, but I couldn't come up with them. So we've got another negative topic. If anybody has a good positive topic for me to talk about tomorrow, let me know. Like put it on a super chat or something. But I'm really looking for a good positive topic to cover. Haven't covered anything positive since we did the Matt Ridley interview, which you should all watch. It was really good. And buy his book, of course. Since the Matt Ridley interview, we really haven't done anything positive. So please, if you got any ideas for a positive topic for me to do tomorrow, I'd really be happy to do it. Just doing SpaceX, not enough. Talking about how much I love my fans. It would take 5 minutes. Positive topic, sex. Oh my God, How Innovation Works did that. That's a book, by the way, by Matt Ridley. Go buy it. Not much positive happening. All right, yeah, I guess not much positive happening. So there we go. I could do more art, but I don't know if you guys are interested. I don't really have any new movies to recommend. And I rewatched, and you guys are gonna hate me, but I rewatched Mr. Sunshine. I could do a whole show of Mr. Sunshine, but I don't think it'll resonate. So I love that show. My favorite TV show of all time now, officially, is Mr. Sunshine. I've watched it twice. I've never done that with a TV show before in my life. I'm going to watch it. I think my wife and I decided we're going to watch it every year. It was so much fun. It was such a deep experience. So anyway, that's my plan now, is to watch that every year. All right. Let's talk about Chaz. Chaz, which is the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, which has been declared by demonstrators from originally from Black Lives Matter. Who knows who's running it these days? In Seattle. So it's a section of Seattle, 6 blocks. Basically, it's a police-free zone. The members of the people occupying Chaz have declared it a police-free zone. It used to have a Seattle police station called the East Precinct in the 6 blocks over there. And the police abandoned it, just like they did in Minneapolis, just like they've done in other places around the country. They abandoned it. Protesters were going to storm it, or protesters were going to protest outside of it. So the police decided to leave it. They boarded it up, literally boarded it up, and left. And as a consequence, there are no police in that area. There has been the border of these 6 blocks has been, I guess they put barricades across them. These protesters, or whoever it is inside this, there are people with guns patrolling these barricades. It's hard to tell. The news sources differ. Some news sources are saying people can just walk in and out, nobody cares. Some sources are saying some people are asked to show IDs. The protesters are saying they've got guns because they're afraid white supremacists are going to come. I guess there was a shooting against the demonstrators in Seattle earlier this week, so they're saying white supremacists are going to come, so this is to protect themselves. It basically, from first-hand accounts, it seems like it's like one big fair that people are just hanging out there, and street vendors and people just going in and out of curiosity. And, Seattle's still under lockdown, so a lot of stores there have not opened up. They're still boarded up. And just people walking in and out and hanging out, and the police are not allowed in. I don't know what that means. I don't know what would happen if police actually walked in, but police, seem to not be going in. State leaders don't really know what to do with this. Originally the governor, Jay Inslee, didn't even know what was happening, and they might have made fun of him. And then the mayor, she has basically said, "This is cool, great, isn't this wonderful?" And she said, it's one big block party. Let them do it. What the hell, right? She said at some point, she even said, they might abandon the area for the summer and let people just do their thing. And she said, it'll be like the summer of love. It'll be a summer of love out there. So the mayor seems to think this is cool. A bunch of hippies occupying the place. Now, there's some video where some rapper declared himself the police and harassing people and so on. I haven't really found any solid sources about what's going on in terms of that, if that's continuing, if that's real or not. Also, there was some rumors that the people with the guns were shaking down businesses, local businesses. And again, the police chief in Seattle has said that they've heard that that's a possibility, but they have no evidence of it actually happening. I don't know if you guys know, but the city council in Seattle is nutty left, super left. Explicit socialists were elected to the city council in Seattle. People who ran on as socialists were elected. Wouldn't be surprised if this was another city that decided to do away with police, or at least have an experiment with 6 blocks where there is no police. The city of Seattle, like much of the left, is just, particularly the kind of the radical left. They're anti-police. They're anti the role of police in society, and which is to protect us, to protect individual rights. They think that people left free. I did a show on this. People left free of the institutions that oppress them, like the police, would not commit any crimes. And, this is like a little utopian, anarchistic village for them. And they are just abandoning any responsibility that they might have for the protection of the citizens within that district. Now, so far, we haven't heard of any extreme violence. So far, we haven't heard. But the police chief, I did read a story, where now the police chief is very unhappy. I think she's black or Hispanic. I can't tell, and it's not really important. But in these days, these things seem to gain importance. She wants to go in and retake the zone. She wants to go in and retake it. And the mayor won't let her. And she mentioned the fact that, there might be rapes going on, and there might be, all kind of other crimes being committed in this zone. And she can't respond because she wants a precinct back. And as long as the precinct is not back, then she feels impotent, and she can't respond to potential violence in Chaz. Now, we don't know of any violence yet, other than the one video that was circulating in Chaz. But who knows what's going to happen? Nobody knows. Trump, on the other hand, has said he's going to send in federal troops. He wants to retake it. If the mayor doesn't retake Chaz, he will. Again, using, I guess, the Insurrection Act as his excuse. Really, I mean, under the Insurrection Act, the president, I'm reading this from an article, the president may intervene when requested by a state's legislature or governor if the legislature cannot convene. Legislature has not asked him to intervene, to suppress insurrection. In this case, there's neither rebellion nor request. The Insurrection Act also allows for unilateral action in the case of unlawful obstruction, assemblage, or rebellion against the United States. Yet again, there's no challenge to federal authority in the 6-block protest. This is a local issue. And look, I think it should stay a local issue. If the people of Seattle have voted a particular city council in with a leftist agenda that doesn't believe in policing, doesn't believe in its responsibility to protect the rights. Policing is a duty of the states, not of the federal government, predominantly, unless you violate federal law. Then the people of Seattle should suffer the consequences. Maybe next time they'll elect better people. The federal government should not engage. It's going to lead to nothing here. If they did, and I can't believe they would. But if they did, it's not clear it's constitutional. It's not clear it's not a violation of law. Beyond that, the people of Seattle would rebel against it, or at least some people in Seattle. It would go, you'd have this conflict between the state and the federal government over what? Over 6 blocks? This is not the first time this has happened. These kind of co-ops that have declared themselves independent. I remember when I was growing up in Israel, there was an area in Israel which declared itself independent. Nobody took it seriously. Everybody knew that if a real crime was committed, the police would go in. But, they pretended that they were an autonomous region within Israel. And they, it was run by a bunch of hippies. I'm sure the same thing happened in the United States and various places. And people pretend. People like to play pretend. Particularly people detached from reality, as these people in Chaz must be. They've got a long list of demands. Basically, they're calling for dismantling capitalism and dismantling the police and basically handing over everything, handing over the apparatuses of power to even more extreme leftists than what you have in Seattle already. It is nutty. It is stupid. It is ridiculous. Yes, they're walking around with guns, but I don't remember any conservatives complaining about people walking around with guns when they were doing so in protest of the lockdown. And all these protesters, every time I read a story, they are claiming their Second Amendment rights. So those of you who are big Second Amendment people can't, just because you don't like the politics of the people carrying the gun, doesn't mean they don't have a right, I guess, to carry a gun. Washington is an open carry state. So you can carry gun in open, right? So they've got semi-automatic weapons open, walking around. So it is a nutty situation dominated by nuts, by people who have no respect for the rule of law, by people who have no respect for the system of government we have, people I've been talking about all week, people who have no respect for the legitimate powers and role of the police, people who have no respect for their own government, but I'm not sure you should have much respect for your own government in Seattle, and who are taking the law into their own hands. It should be not allowed. The Seattle police should go in. They should take it back. They should take their precinct back. They should never have abandoned it. Nothing good comes from police abandoning precincts out of fear from a mob. Nothing good. Now, I love Seattle. Seattle's a wonderful city. It's a beautiful city. I have a lot of friends who live in Seattle. A lot of people who listen to this show, I'm sure, are in Seattle. And I love Seattle's a wonderful place. But it's a wacky place. Its politics are crazy. And again, like Minneapolis, they have elected a city council filled with, extreme leftists, a mayor who is obviously longs for the 1960s and hippiedom and wants a summer of love. A summer of love. So it's sad. I feel sorry for the people living in those 6 blocks, although I saw some interviews with them where they don't seem to mind, but it's hard to tell. Are they saying that because they want to be politically correct, or are they saying that because they really don't mind? I just don't know. Somebody says Seattle has no state income tax like Puerto Rico. No, Puerto Rico has state income tax. Oh my God. Puerto Rico has very high state income tax. Puerto Ricans have some of the highest taxes anyway. What Puerto Rico doesn't have is it doesn't have federal taxes. Puerto Ricans don't pay federal taxes, but they pay through the nose state taxes, corporations, personal. I have a special category where I pay no federal taxes and very, 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 very minor state taxes, but most Puerto Ricans pay very high taxes, state. All right, let's see. I'm just looking to see if there's any questions here about Chaz. No. No questions about Chaz, so we'll go on. I mean, I find the whole issue not that interesting. I find it funny that Donald Trump, the president of the United States, gets upset about something like this. I find it ridiculous that the right is going apoplectic about it. Yeah, I mean, it should be stopped. It should be controlled. It should be, I mean, you should make as much fun and ridicule the city government of Seattle and the state government of Washington for allowing this to happen and for keeping hands off from it. But, you know, it's not life-changing. By the way, the 2 other cities, I think Portland and Nashville, some protesters tried to create their own Chaz, and they were shut down by police there. So that was not allowed in Portland and Nashville. So good for them for not allowing this nonsense. I guess there's vegan food in Chaz. Somebody says, yeah, I read something about there's a vegan food festival in Chaz. So if you're into vegan food and you're in, it's just, the whole thing is just hippie, leftist, you know, silliness, and anarchy, and it'll descend into, you know, something bad will happen there, and the police will have to go in and retake it, or the police will just get tired and they'll go in and retake it, or the people who live there will beg the police to come and save them from this nonsense, and they'll go in and retake it. So one way or another, this will not last, I don't think, very long. Or maybe it'll last and it'll become like a Seattle tourist attraction where everybody kind of winks and blinks and pretends that it's an autonomous zone, but it's really just a tourist thing for Seattle. Who knows exactly how it evolved? Either way, it is not the beginning of the revolution. Either way, it is not the beginning of the end of civilization, what is happening in Chaz. It's just an example of the impotence and the pathetic nature of these city governments in these rabidly leftist areas. And it is a case where people are suffering the consequence of the people they elect. This is why you should vote, because politicians have an impact on your life. This is why you should care about politics. Not too much, but care about politics because politicians have an impact on your life. So, you know, completely screwy. All right, I want to talk a little bit about cancel culture, which I've not talked about that much. I've talked about a little bit last time. Somebody asked me about it, but you know, it really is getting ridiculous. And it really is, I mean, what cancel culture, what Chaz, what I think Black Lives Matter and the response to it, what all of this is kind of adding up to is really, and I was thinking of titling the show this, but it seemed a little bit overly dramatic. It really is the death of reason in America. It really is, you know, people don't want to debate, don't want to discuss. There is a new religion in town. It is the religion of whatever the left declares to be necessary, not even true. We saw that yesterday when I talked about anti-racism, the new anti-racism religion. There is a dogma, and you must follow the dogma. We cannot have discussions. We cannot have debates. The dogma is not a reason-based dogma. It's not a dogma. Dogma never is. In religion, never is. It's not one that derived from logic, reason, reality. It's one that is focused on emotion, and that emotion it becomes a religion. And what makes it a religion is that it demands sacrifice. It demands fighting, and it demands fighting about the faith. No reason is provided. No justification is needed. All that is demanded is that people go out there and do and say what they're told to do and say. This is blind obedience. That is what the demand is. But what is fascinating about it is, as with all religions, the first step that this culture engages in is in attacking its own, in purifying its ranks. So the first thing it must do is attack other leftists and cancel them, which is silence them, exclude them, fire them, get rid of them, in one way or another, eliminate their voice, cancel them out. Now, I've got a series of examples here. There's a good article in Reason.com. It's called the 1793 Project. 1793 Project on Mass. This is a response to 1619 Project. You know what 1793 is? Well, it's the French Revolution. It's the guillotine. So, like what I talked about the other day about Rousseau and about the kind of culture of eliminating one's enemies and the culture of violence, Reason, this article plays off of that, right? Plays off of that. And it's the same kind of analogy, which I have already used, by Robbie Soaves, S-O-A-V-E. And he gives a number of examples of how, of this just recently and in the past. So I'll give you an example. So there's a guy named David Shaw. David Shaw, 28 years old, political scientist at the Democratic consulting firm Civic Analysis. So it's a Democrat, leftist organization. He's a Democrat, leftist. During the demonstrations, he tweeted out observations about the degree to which violence helps a cause or doesn't. The degree to which movements are more or less successful whether they use violence or not. So, for example, he shared research by Princeton University Professor Omar Wazow, who's found that violent protests often backfire. Nonviolent protests are far more likely to succeed. And I think that's absolutely true in this case. I think the violence of the rioters in the first few nights of the protests really did the protests harm, and I think the protests would have been much more successful, by their own standards, if there'd be no violence. Because the violence gives an excuse to those who oppose them to say, see. Right? So, he did this because he believes in the Black Lives Matter cause. And he said, look, if you believe in the Black Lives Matter cause, violence will not help it, so stop it. Just research. Well, he was immediately denounced. Immediately denounced by the progressive activists, by the leftists. They denounced him as a racist. This goes back to my anti-racism comment yesterday. Unless you agree with them completely on everything, you are a racist, including on whether to use violence or not, it turns out. So here's this 28-year-old political scientist doing his best to try to promote the cause and explaining that violence typically doesn't help a cause. And he's denounced as a racist. One activist accused Shaw of using his anxiety and intellect as a vehicle for anti-blackness. This is what I meant yesterday by, unless you follow their prescription of how to behave as an anti-racist, you are a racist. No matter what your views are, no matter what your opinions are, no matter what the color of your skin is, no matter anything you do, you are a racist unless you follow their very clearly delimited agenda. Now, okay, so the guy's attacked. You might say big deal. But in these tweets and attacks, his consulting firm that employs him was tagged and invited, the company was invited to, quote, come get your boy. And they fired him. They fired him. Right? This is what I mean by they're culling their own. The first step in the revolution is get rid of all the weak links. Get rid of all the people who don't follow the dogma, who are on your side, but don't follow the dogma. You only want pure of heart, or you want to intimidate everybody into following the dogma, whether they agree with it or not, so that there are no dissenting voices on your side. So all the dissenting voices on the other side, you can easily argue that they are white supremacists, fascists, racists, whatever. But first thing, you have to cleanse the left. You have to cleanse the left of anybody who doesn't follow the party line, the anti-racist BLM party line, which means you cannot say anything disparaging about the demonstrations, the riots, the violence, if the party line says it's inappropriate. Right? You saw this, right? You see this all over the place. Now, you saw this in the campus demonstrations. You saw this in the campus silencing of certain speakers. But most of those were conservatives. Now, they're going after their own. They have been for a while. Now, there was an article in Atlantic a few years ago. I actually did a show on this years ago by Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff. An excellent article called The Coddling of the American Mind. I mean, I think it's excellent, although it's missing some pieces, but it really is good. And in The Coddling of the American Mind, of the American Mind, they talk about this snowflake phenomenon. These young people who can't handle different points of view, different opinions, different ideas. They get offended. They get upset. It's like violence on their soul. And they talk about the fact that the reason that we have all these snowflakes is they grew up as a generation where safety was the primary and emotionalism was the primary. They grew up with a progressive education idea that what education is for is to cultivate your emotions. To cultivate your emotions. And to make you feel safe. And their parents, these helicopter parents who took care of everything and didn't allow them to get a scratch on their knee and didn't allow them to do anything that might be a little scary. These parents that kept them safe and cultivated their emotional life and didn't let them cry and didn't let them be upset about anything. That these parents created a whole generation of snowflakes, of people afraid to be challenged, afraid to be told they're wrong, or afraid not even to be told they're wrong, to be told that there are ideas that might be different than their own. An unthinking generation, a generation that's abandoned reason, a generation that is being told they're smart and they're good and everybody got ribbons and they all have self-esteem and they're all just wonderful, fantastic people and nobody should ever say anything different. But at the same time, they've also been told that if they're white, they're guilty of awful racism. They should feel immense guilt. And that they're privileged. So this weird, conflicting, strange, emotionalist agenda that they have inside of them doesn't add up to anything, complete disintegration. But the one thing they hold on to is the idea that they need to be safe. They cannot be challenged. And that ideas, that speech is a threat. It's a threat to their safety. They have to run to their safe spaces and cuddle a teddy bear in order to survive an idea that might be different than what they've ever heard before. I'm already getting teary-eyed. Out of fear for these gentle, spoiled brats. So, they don't want any ideas that might upset them. They don't want any ideas that might challenge them. They don't want any ideas that might be violence on their soul. Violence on their emotions. And indeed, when they've gone out and censored people on campuses, they've always used this idea of personal safety. It's not safe for them to hear these ideas. It's not safe for them to have Charles Murray on campus. It's not safe for them to have, I don't know, Jordan Peterson on campus. They feel threatened. Not because anybody's going to punch them in the face, but because the ideas are threatening them. And of course, these kids leave college and they go to the workplace. And maybe some of them go to work for the New York Times. And then the New York Times publishes an op-ed that they don't like, that is offensive to them, that actually says maybe the military should go out there and shut down the protests. Agree or disagree. Written by a U.S. senator. I mean, not a senator I like, not an op-ed I agree with particularly, but yeah, it wasn't super nutty. It was not right, but it wasn't super nutty. But the New York Times staffers, 800 of them, claimed that running this ad put their, particularly black staff's, lives in danger. How? It's an idea. If you don't like it, don't agree with it, reject it. How does an idea that is not being manifest in reality put your life in danger? Running the piece, not somebody acting on it, just printing it. They invoked workplace safety. They did not feel safe in the New York Times building in New York. I don't know, because because federal troops, special forces were going to rush into the New York Times because that's where they did. No, doesn't make any sense. But that's the point. It doesn't make sense. The emotions are primary. They didn't feel safe. I believe that. Because their emotions were hurt. Their emotions were challenged. Their ideas were challenged. And instead of defending themselves, instead of writing an alternative op-ed, instead of saying, Senator Cotton, you're full of it, you're wrong, instead of that, they just said, we need to shut him up. And of course, the victim here didn't land up being Tom Cotton, the Republican senator from Arkansas. No. He's not the target at all. He's not the one they're after. What the whole cancel culture is about is silencing the voices from within. Silencing the left's voices that are not towing the line. So who got sacrificed here? Who lost his job here? Not Tom Cotton. But the editor of the op-ed page of the New York Times lost his job over this. Now, was the editor of the op-ed page of the New York Times some crazy right-wing white supremacist? No. Did the editor of the op-ed page of the New York Times agree with Tom Cotton's op-ed? Clearly, no. He was a leftist. But he was a leftist that believed that the op-ed page of the New York Times should reflect diverse opinions in the culture of people with influence. Because it's good for the readers of the New York Times to know what people are thinking and what ideas, what scope, range of ideas are out there. He's the one who lost his job. Right? For them, to be safe is to be coddled. To be safe is to be hugged. To be safe is to be affirmed. Safety means being told that you're right, being told that you're good, being told that you're a winner. Safety means getting a ribbon. And when somebody comes up to you and says, I disagree, oh my God, that is offensive. I know, by the way, all kinds of people don't like when people say, I disagree. I love it when people say to me, I disagree. Great, why? Tell me, why? Let me learn something, or not. But I'm not offended by you disagreeing with me. I'm indeed shocked if you agree with me too much. UCLA, this last week, suspended a lecturer, Gordon Klein, after he declined a demand that he make a final exam no harm. This is again from the Reason article. That is, an exam that could only improve your grade for students of color who might have been traumatized by events in Minneapolis. So the idea is, because of what happened in Minneapolis, students at UCLA might be traumatized, might be very, very upset, and therefore, they should be allowed to take an exam that only improves their grades. Now, everybody else who's not traumatized, I don't know if this would apply to whites who are traumatized, I don't know, they can't get that benefit. Only the students of color who claim to be traumatized get the benefit of a freebie, a free exam that can only improve your grade. Talk about discrimination. Talk about racism. Talk about appeal to emotion. Talk about coddling snowflakes. You know, in Israel, in college, we would do, in the middle of college, you would be called up to the army. We were all on reserve. Everybody was on reserve. You would go for a month. Maybe you'd go for a month to the West Bank or the Gaza Strip, or in my day, or to Lebanon even. And you might be engaged in literal life or death situations. And when you came back, you expected to catch up on your studies and take exams, even if you had been traumatized by what had occurred wherever you were. Now remember, these UCLA kids were in LA when this thing happened in Minneapolis. Now I get it that they might be upset. But grow a spine. Grow some balls. I'll get to growing balls in a minute, but come on. Now, Klein refused to allow this to happen. And by the way, this is according to UCLA guidelines, which do not allow for giving leeway like this on exams. The activists got a petition together, and he got suspended. My guess is Klein is a leftist. But you got to cleanse your ranks. And this goes on and on and on and on, where people are losing their employment, losing their social standing, being harassed on Twitter and Facebook, being shamed and ridiculed and threatened. And yeah, they're not being guillotined. They're not being killed. They're not being beaten up yet. We'll see what happens. but it's people's jobs, it's people's livelihood. And what effect that this has, and will have, and continues to have, is that it causes people to be silent. It causes people to not object. It causes people to not discuss, not debate. And as a consequence, you get the sense that, or the idea is to give the impression that everybody agrees, that everybody's on the same page, that everybody buys into this radical, nutty agenda, and just accept. And then when we look at it, it looks like everybody, let's say in academia, agrees with these people, but it's not true. There are plenty of people in academia who don't agree with these nuts. But they can't speak up. If they did, they'd lose their job, or lose their standing, or be kicked out of a journal, or not be allow their papers to be published. They would be penalized. So what is happening now is silencing the dissenters, silencing those who might stand up against the emerging dominant view on the extreme left. Now, this has been going on not just at universities and at workplaces, but you see the attacks on J.K. Rowling, no S. J.K. Rowling, the writer of Harry Potter. Huge successful, billionaire, but a leftist, very much committed to the left. And yet J.K. Rowling has the audacity to actually believe that sex matters. Sex not in the act, but sex in that there is a male men and there are women. And that trans is not sex. That a man who says he's a woman is not a woman. He might be a trans woman, but he's not a woman. He's not the same. I don't know, there's a clear biological claim here that is, in my view, obviously true. And she is objecting to this idea that everybody, trans women and women, be treated exactly the same. Now, for example, I'll give you an example. I don't know what J.K. Rowling views this is sports. Well, a trans woman who's hormonally and in every other aspect a man, men are stronger than women, faster than women. Competing against women is just wrong. In Scotland, supposedly, in order to use a woman's bathroom, all a man needs to do is, I guess, declare himself a woman, get some kind of certificate saying that he's declared himself a woman from the authorities, and he can now use the women's bathroom. And J.K. Rowling is saying, this is a threat. This is dangerous. Too many men can use this to assault women. And it's completely justified for parents and young women to be afraid of this, to be worried about this, to reject this idea. So you can be declared a woman even if you've had none of the hormone treatments and you haven't had any surgery, just by saying you're a woman. You're declared a woman. I mean, talk about emotion above reason. The victory of emotionalism over reality, facts. Now, J.K. Rowling is famous and she's a billionaire and she can take it, but her just indicating, and she says, generally she supports trans rights, the rights of individuals to transition if they want to. She supports them not being discriminated against. She takes a very individualist approach to this. She says, you can do what you want. She says she has friends who are trans and so on. But she says, let's not be nuts about this. women do menstruate. Trans women do not. That's a biological difference. Just for saying that. People are being ridiculed and attacked on social media. And they're being accused of being transphobic, or, which is the equivalent of being accused of racism. And J.K. Rowling has written an essay. You can find it on her website, jkrowling.com. It's called J.K. Rowling Writes About Her Reasons for Speaking Out on Sex and Gender Issues. It's worth reading. It's an interesting read, whatever you think about these issues. She explains her reasons. She explains why she's involved, mainly because she cares about women and women's safety, but she also cares about definitions of sex and sexuality and what it means. And she was, I guess, a sexual assault victim. She's afraid for women who are going to become victims of sexual assault by men pretending to be women, whatever. And I think it's a really good, it's a good essay. It's worth reading. I don't agree with everything in it. You're not going to agree with everything in it. But it gives you a perspective on this whole issue and how violent the issue has become. It's become like race. If you say anything skeptical about children transitioning, which I think is a crime. I think a doctor who transitions a child should be prosecuted. Parents who transition a child should be prosecuted under the law as child abuse. J.K. Rowling herself says there were times when she was a teenager, she didn't like being a woman. She didn't like being a girl. And her father didn't want a girl. He wanted a son, which she would have been tempted to transition. But then she says, that would have been horrific because I'm a woman and I love being a woman. I just had when you're a teenager, you're confused. I know lots of little girls, 7, 8, 9, who would rather be boys. They're tomboys. We used to call them tomboys. Now, they're labeled as trans. And if they say they want to be a boy, the parents immediately take them seriously and start talking about the possibility of transitioning. I mean, it's insanity. And if you do the surgery and you change your mind, the damage cannot be undone. Cannot be undone. It turns out that many of these kids who want to transition, or some of them, many of them, are autistic. Just the idea that a kid knows what it means to be male or female, has an opinion about it. Maybe, and again, J.K. Rowling talks about this, some women or men who are gay, but afraid of coming out as gay, afraid of the stigma, still in the world we live in today, afraid of it. Transition as a way of, because there's less of a, I guess, stigma. I mean, that's horrible. Some of the most feminine women I know, some of the most feminine women I know were tomboys. What you are as a young child, what you are as a teenager even, does not reflect what you're going to be and what you're going to think and what you're going to want and what you're going to care about. Teenagers generally are depressed. Teenagers generally don't like their lives. So they want to change. But this is the kind of change you do not want your teenager to have. Until they're sure 100% that this is what they want and they understand the full consequences. But now, it's easy. And it's encouraged. And it's supported. And if you're against it, if you speak up against it, if you say anything against it, if you discuss it in any way without embracing it and endorsing it, you're transphobic, which is worse than being racist, and you're probably a racist too, because I think intersectionality says that if you're one of these evils, you're all of these evils. The left is killing itself. J.K. Rowling is a leftist. She supports a lot of leftist causes. She's a prominent woman on the left. But they're killing her themselves. This is why I always said, the left ultimately, the nutty left ultimately cannot rule. It is too disintegrated. It is too violent. It is too out to kill its own people. They need a dogma that many more people can accept. They need a real religion. What they have right now is not enough of a religion yet. So, good for J.K. Rowling. I'm a big fan of Harry Potter, and you know, and she writes well. She's intelligent. Her reasoning is good. Again, you're not going to agree with everything. I don't agree with everything, but it's worth reading if you're interested in this culture that just writes people off. So she's been written off by millions and millions of people online. There have been book burnings of J.K. Rowling's books of Harry Potter because she said something that they view as transphobic. All right, we have a lot of questions, so we're going to go over questions now. One related to this. What do you think about the character Taylor Mason on Billions and the person who plays them, Asia K. Dillon? I don't know anything about Asia K. Dillon, so I can't comment on that. But I don't particularly like the character of Taylor Mason. I mean, she plays this, I guess, it's not clear what, it's a female, but it's not clear. It's like, and she wants to be called they, which I think is ridiculous and stupid. They is right. There's only one, and you can't be they if you're one. And it's not first person. It's just in every respect. It's just silly. Obviously autistic. Taylor Mason seems to be autistic in the show, at least early on. Super smart, super able, but I don't know what the whole sexual thing is. I just don't get it. Maybe because I'm a boomer, right? All right. Let's start from the top. A lot of these all over the place. Oh, two questions in the same. There are two questions that have the same thing. Let me just find it. Is tearing down statues justified? Is tearing down Confederate Columbus, Saddam, Stalin statues equivalent? What makes a good, bad tear down? And the second question is, what do you think about the efforts to remove statues, rename forts, etc., of controversial historical figures? Is there a principle to use in differentiating between reason and unreason on this issue? Yes, there is a principle. We shouldn't have statues celebrating evil people who held evil ideas. We shouldn't have names of institutions. Public institutions. Private institutions can do whatever they want. And the same with statues, by the way. We're talking about statues on public land or statues in public spaces that celebrate names of forts and things like that celebrate evil people with evil ideas. So it's easy when it comes to Saddam, Stalin, and so on. What about Confederate? Well, Jefferson Davis is a bad guy. He is an enemy of the United States of America. He seceded from the Union. He was an enemy of the United States. Not to mention he was pro-slavery and was willing to see hundreds of thousands of young men die for the sake of preserving slavery. So, Jefferson Davis, why would you have a sculpture which is a celebration of, a commemoration of, an admiration for a man who almost split this country apart, responsible for the death of 600,000 American young people, and did it for the sake of preserving an institution that is one of the most barbaric in all of human history? I don't think we should erect, somebody asked, what about Pharaoh statues? I don't believe we should erect statues for Pharaoh and have them in public places. Museums. Great. These are historical figures. Put them in a museum where we can study their importance. They're important. But these are bad people. General, what's the general of the Confederacy? See, I'm really bad with names. We'll get to Columbus and Churchill in a minute. But let's do, General Lee. General Lee was a bad man. He could have fought for the North. He had the opportunity not to fight for the preservation of slavery. He was not this gentleman. He was not this genius soldier fighting for a cause that is worthy of fighting for. No, he fought for a horrible, disgusting cause. And we should not have statues for him. So I'm absolutely for pulling down and putting in a museum the statues of anybody associated with the Confederacy. You know, at Clemson University, there's statues for Calhoun, who founded the university, I guess. But Calhoun was a racist who wrote racist screeds, who defended slavery, defended it philosophically, in quotes. That's horrible, and that is evil. So no, I do not think they should be there. I do not believe the Confederate flag should be flown. I mean, you have a right to hang it out the window of your home, but it does represent something. So, no, I'm completely, Calhoun attacked the Declaration of Independence and so on. I'm completely for the removal of statues. Now, Churchill, like Jefferson, might have had some weaknesses. But overall, Churchill fought for the good. Overall, Churchill defended Western civilization. Overall, Churchill saved the United Kingdom from the Nazis. His failings were nowhere near the scale of the failings of somebody fighting, committing their life to the cause of slavery. Thomas Jefferson was a slave owner. But Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, which ultimately eliminated slavery from America. You have to place their virtues and vices in perspective. What are the virtues of Robert E. Lee? Columbus discovered America, a massive achievement. Now, Columbus was also cruel towards the indigenous population and towards his own people. Columbus was a fanatical Christian. And yes, Christianity should be condemned for all the evil that it's done. But Columbus discovered America. For that, he should be celebrated. For the courage, audacity to do it. He was not a perfect person. He was flawed in big ways. But in discovering America, he changed the world and should be celebrated for that. Jefferson would have sided with the North. Washington would have sided with the North in a civil war. And if they hadn't, if they had literally fought to defend slavery, then he shouldn't admire them. Robert E. Lee fought for the state of Virginia. He was a statist, but not just an intellectual statist. He was involved in the slaughter of hundreds of thousands of men. Should we have sculptures of Karl Marx? No. Evil ideology, evil man. Now, FDR, Woodrow Wilson, bad presidents. Okay, but a lot of people in America think they're good presidents. One day, when reason wins, my guess is the statues of Woodrow Wilson, FDR, and many other presidents will be put in museums and not displayed publicly as celebration. All right. I just finished the Romantic Manifesto and thought it was fantastic and insightful. Yes, it is. Do you think that modern art today is naturalistic, or did naturalism evolve into something more nihilistic? Well, it depends on what you mean by modern art. The stuff you see in the plastic arts and sculpture and in painting, the scribbles, the splashes of paint, the non-objective, that's not art. That's just scribbles and splashes. It might be decorative, it might be aesthetic, but it's not art because it doesn't represent anything. It doesn't have a meaning. It doesn't reflect an artist's metaphysical value judgments. If you mean movies, most movies are naturalistic. Most movies, most novels are naturalistic. But the non-objective art is not art. Some more experimental cinema is nihilistic. It's not naturalistic. It's more like the splashes of paint. Music, the noise music is not music. It's noise. It's a perversion of the art, not art itself. Right? So, yeah, I'm really, really glad you enjoyed the Romantic Manifesto, and I hope many of you too. But, some of the better novels, the better movies made today are naturalistic. Naturalism is the form that dominates in those works of art that are real, actual art. So painters, sculptures that are art, that are not the splashes of paint, tend towards naturalism. There's very little romanticism in painting and sculpture today, even among the better artists that actually are figurative. It's usually not attractive, not romanticized, not conveying anything deep or important. All right, thoughts on school uniforms. If you ran a private school, would you institute them? I feel they can be crucial to a good schooling system. I don't know. I wouldn't. I hated uniforms. But I can understand why people would. I mean, I'm pro-private schools that can experiment and see and let the better system win. But I am not a fan of school uniforms. I think it's kind of cute when I go to, Eton or Harrow, these British schools where everybody wears kind of a tuxedo to school. But as a student, I would hate it. Why divert attention from actually learning to focus on my hatred of the uniform? I had a uniform at school, I guess, a loose uniform. You could wear jeans, but you had to wear blue shirts. And I'm not big one way or the other. It's not an issue for me. You'd have to ask an education specialist. But I do believe in private schools that gets taken care of. You basically have different schools, and you see who provides a better education. Would you be able to do an update version of your perspective on personal finance, taking into account the COVID-19 situation? I loved that episode. All right, let me put that aside and let me try to do that. So post-COVID-19 personal finance, I have to think about what I would say different. But yeah, I put that aside as a topic for a show. Could you do a show on Kurosawa's films High and Low and Bad Sleep Well? The Bad Sleep Well. They are interesting moral dilemmas that I'd love your opinion on. I don't remember seeing those two Kurosawa movies. I've seen many of his other movies, but not those. My favorite Kurosawa movies are Kagemusha and Ran. Ran is King Lear reimagined, right? Japanese interpretation of King Lear. I'll have to see the movies first. So let me see if I can find them and have the time and patience to watch them. But I used to be, and still am, in memory at least, a big Kurosawa fan. So I like Kurosawa a lot. And he deals a lot with objectivity, with moral dilemmas, things like that. So he's a very, very, very thoughtful and beautiful filmmaker. So he makes beautiful movies that are also always, all his movies are thought-provoking, deeply thought-provoking. He's most well known for The Seven Samurais. What do you think about the theory that Obama and Hillary Clinton misused the FBI against their opponents and could go to jail? Do you believe it could really be bigger than Watergate? No, I don't. Did Obama misuse the FBI? Maybe. He misused the IRS. Why wouldn't he misuse the FBI? Will he go to jail? No. It'll never happen. There's no, I don't believe it was done in a way that is so overt that it would lead to sending a former president to jail. People forget that Trump won. Hillary lost. And I don't know. If I were the president of the United States and Trump was going to be the Republican nominee, I might have used the FBI to at least make sure that the guy's not a complete and utter crook, because he certainly gives that impression. So I don't know. I don't know enough about it, but I doubt it seriously. Politicians of both parties are smart enough and have enough lawyers around them that when they do abuse the laws, and they all do, and Obama certainly did in huge ways, they do so in ways where they are protected legally. And I suspect that is, if there's anything going on with Obama and Clinton with regard to the election, that they did it in a way that you can't catch up to them. You're not going to be able to pin them on. I also think that nobody cares enough. I mean, to me, the worst thing that happened during the Obama presidency was the IRS scandal, which was brought to light. Nobody really rejected. Everybody accepted. And nobody cared. Nothing bad actually happened to the players. And if that's the case, what's it to be worried about? That was about as bad an incident of political corruption as you can imagine. Basically, in the IRS, deciding whether somebody could get nonprofit status or not, they were deciding it based on whether you're conservative or not. Conservatives did not get it, and everybody else did. And that's unbelievably discriminatory. Political. And yet, nobody paid a price for that. Nobody cares about it. The press didn't make a big deal of it. Republicans didn't make a big deal of it. And I suspect the Republicans didn't make a big deal out of it is because they do the same thing when they're in power. That they're just as corrupt. They use all the tools available to them in power to protect themselves and to go after their enemies. Could you talk about how the police, army, and court system would be funded and how the taxes collected under laissez-faire capitalism? Yeah, I mean, I've done some videos on this. Basically, it would be funded, the courts could be funded by a fee. Ayn Rand wrote about this. A fee that basically guarantees a fee on contracts. So if you wanted your contract to be protected by the court system and enforced by the police, you would have to pay a fee for that. Otherwise, you could use private arbitration and private stuff. You just wouldn't have access to the police and the court system. So you'd pay a fee. So you could fund a lot just from that. If you think about contracts If you think about the size of contracts in the United States, imagine some nominal fee on all of that. That's a lot of money. You can run a lot of government on that. The rest would have to be voluntary contributions, I think. And that would be, I think, good, because it would basically make sure that if the government went to war or if the government engaged in some big expenditure, people could just stop giving money to the government. They would withdraw their support. And that would make it impossible for the government to go through with whatever it is that they wanted without convincing people to pay for it. So I'm big on voluntary funding of government. Were the Nazis environmentalists? The Nazis were, if I remember right, and I'm not an expert on this, lovers of nature. There was something about return to the fatherland and to the land and to experience nature directly. So I don't think they were modern style environmentalists, but they did care about nature and the importance of nature and being in nature and living in nature and protecting nature. And they certainly didn't care about individual human life. So I wouldn't call them environmentalists in the modern sense, although they did have this deep commitment to nature in a mystical sense that is similar to environmentalism. Should the police be able to search your vehicle without a warrant? No, not unless they have probable cause. They would have to stop you, and then they would have to have a reason at that point that they could defend in a court of law, that they could objectively defend for why they're searching your car. So they suspect that you just robbed the antique store and the antiques are in your trunk. They would have to have you fit the description of this thief. Some of the antiques are showing through the window. Something. Somebody gave the police the driver's the plate as they drove off for the robbery, whatever. They'd have to have strong cause. So otherwise, they'd need a warrant. So either a warrant in advance or on the spot, strong cause. Now, of course, the drug wars complicate this because they could smell marijuana or they can make up excuses. This is why I'm against the drug war as a major and one of the first and most significant reforms of the police necessary. All right, no more Super Chat questions. We're getting a lot of them, and oh, wow, hour and a half already. A friend of a friend owns a nursing home with no cases of corona. He paid the staff to stay in the facility until widespread testing was available, 65 days. Most nursing homes are busy saying they followed the CDC and not their fault. Yeah, good for your friend of a friend. I mean, he protected his patients. Hopefully he'll be rewarded by people staying in the nursing home and recommending it to their friends, because that is the right way to do it, right? And those other nursing homes, many of them were incredibly irresponsible. And of course the CDC and primarily the governors who sent patients from hospitals to nursing homes probably are responsible for many of the deaths that occurred. From your show the other day, it occurred to me that the notion of white guilt and original sin are the same. Can you comment? Absolutely. What white guilt leverages is the existence of the notion of original sin in Christianity. And it's leveraged by the racists. It's leveraged to attack you. It's absolutely white guilt and original sin are the same thing. Original sin can take many, many different forms. And white guilt is a dominant one in the culture in which we live today. And it's horrific that you're guilty for something you have no control over, which means you have no moral agency about the color of your skin. And that is the opposite of morality. It is a disgusting racist notion. Can you do a show on corporate social responsibility? I find it ridiculous how corporations have turned into activists. Yes, let me add that to my list of shows I need to do. Is the societal re-litigation of the NFL kneeling Kaepernick controversy even worth discussing? Not really. I find it uninteresting, except for the fact that, again, everybody has folded. Everybody now agrees, whatever you think about the controversy. And I didn't think it was a big deal originally. But no matter what you think, it's scary to watch. Everybody, the owners, the players like Drew Brees and the NFL commissioner, everybody giving up the position they held 3 years ago, completely, because of not wanting to appear politically incorrect. Completely folding. And again, I don't agree with the NFL's position. That's not the point. The point is that it's not about argument, it's not about discussion, debate. It's about doing what you're told to do, following the agenda, not moving outside of the dogma, the religious dogma that exists today about anti-racism. Corporations hate America, still pro-big business. I'm not pro-big business, I'm not anti-big business. I'm not pro-corporations, anti-corporations. They're corporations, they're businesses. As long as they don't violate the law, good for them. The fact that some of them conform to bad ideas is sad. But I'm not pro or anti-big business. I'm not pro or anti-small business either. Are you anti-small business? The size of a business is irrelevant. It's a question of does it produce value? And it must, because it makes a profit. And to the extent that it lobbies, and to the extent that it is crony, then I condemn the cronyism. But the only way to get rid of cronyism is not to get rid of big business. The only way to get rid of the cronyism is to separate economics from politics. It's to get rid of the politicians power. And some big businesses, yeah, I love because I use their products, I enjoy their products, they enhance my life. That's the standard by which I go. The fact that everybody falls into line around these issues is disgusting, disappointing, upsetting. Whether it's big business, small business, the NFL, the NBA, politicians, it's true of all of them. Good for J.K. Rowling and good for other people standing up to the bullies and not agreeing to fold. What about doing a positive show that celebrates what's great about men? What's great about women? What's great about their differences and similarities? That would be a great show. The challenge there is that a lot of the content for that show would have to be psychological, something I'm not an expert in. The differences between men and women, the meaning and content of sexuality, of femininity and masculinity, a lot of that is psychological, not or manifests itself psychologically. It's not philosophical, and I have experience, obviously through introspection and my experience of people out there, but it's very difficult for me to generalize. I'm not a theorist in this area. So I could do something about it, but it wouldn't be as deep and as extensive as it deserves, as the topic is deserved by an expert. Okay, Kim is the brutal dictator of North Korea. His sister cut the hotline in a saber rattling. Is war imminent? Should America go to war if the South is invaded? America has no choice but to go to war if the South is invaded. America has troops in the South who would be immediately in harm's way and put in threat if the South invaded. No, I do not think war is imminent. I do not think the North wants war, because the North would be devastated in a war. It would be crushed, it would be eliminated, it would be destroyed. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't do it, because these people are completely irrational. But hey, war is impossible, because Donald Trump has been playing 4D chess with the brutal dictator of North Korea, whose name I will not mention. So, this is all just in your imagination that there's any saber rattling or the war might be imminent, because Donald Trump has this completely under control. He's got a bromance with the brutal dictator of North Korea. And he's got, don't you trust Donald Trump? I mean, this is one of his great foreign policy achievements in his first term. He hugged this guy. He kissed this guy. He wrote love letters to this guy. There's no way it turns out that Donald Trump was wrong and Yaron Brook was right. That couldn't be the case. That wouldn't be true. Donald Trump cannot be wrong. Look, they're saber-rattling because they're weak. They're threatening because it's always work to bring people to the table. Bringing people to the table has opened up the coffers in terms of food and dollars. I wouldn't be surprised if that ultimately is the response. I have outlined in past shows what I think an appropriate response in North Korea should be. Mostly ignore them completely and utterly. Make it clear to them what would happen if they fire a shot, which has never been made clear to them. They would be utterly destroyed and devastated. And get out of the way. Just ignore them. And the South Koreans should invest heavily in anti-missile technology. They should buy the technology from Israel and the United States to protect themselves from and Seoul from the North Koreans. But other than that, we should basically ignore them. If the North Koreans launch missiles against the United States, we should knock them out of the sky. We should probably knock them out of the sky on the launch pads as early as possible. As soon as we suspect a launch, we should knock them out. We just shouldn't be coward. And we shouldn't suck up to this guy and pretend that we're friends. It never, ever, ever pays to be nice to evil people. I mean, unless you have to, and they've got a gun pointed to your forehead. But North Korea is incompetent. I mean, South Koreans should be worried, but America? No, so I don't think there'll be a war, primarily because I think the North Koreans know they would lose it big time. Best Buy CEO said customers are using feeling safe to decide brand loyalty. Does society's focus on safety go away with COVID, or is it deeper? It's deeper. And we've reinforced it with the lockdowns. We've reinforced it. You see it with people who are saying, oh my God, you're not wearing a mask, mask shaming, or when I said we should open up, oh, but some people will die. Yes, they will. Some people will die. More people will die if we open up the economy than if everybody stays at home. So it's only getting worse. COVID will make it worse. Now kids are afraid of germs in ways they weren't before. All right. Thanks, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe. We are closing in on 20,000. I think it's a long shot that we make it in June, but there's a good chance we make it in July. And if your help, we might be able to make it in June. So not only should you subscribe, but you should encourage your friends to subscribe. 20,000, it's within reach. Now, 20,000 is just a platform for going to 100. You realize that. That's when we really hit it off. But I need your help. I need to get people you know to subscribe. Most of you are probably subscribed already. If you're not, please subscribe. At least a third to 40% of the people who listen to the show are not subscribed. Please subscribe. And of course, if you enjoy the show, if you like the show, I'd appreciate your financial support. I estimate that the monthly support plus the super chat, about 500 people are supporting the show. These days, most of the shows are being viewed by 2,500 to 3,500 people. There's a bunch of you who don't actually support the show. And then another 2,000 people listen on a podcast. So there's probably every show right now in particular about 5,000 people listen to. There's Facebook, there's Periscope. So about 5,000 people plus listen, watch every single show I do. Only 10% of them are contributing financially to making this show possible. So I'd appreciate it if every one of you considered at least, even $2 a month. Some people do $2 a month. Some people just do $5 on the super chat just as a support. So it would be great if we got the number up to 1,000 or 2,000. Thank you, all of you who do donate, do contribute. I don't like donate. Contribute is a better word. Thank you for all of those who subscribe. Thank you for all of you who contribute. Thank you for all of you who are putting a monetary value on your appreciation for what I do. And we will continue onwards and upwards. So tomorrow, I don't know, 2 or 3 o'clock Eastern time maybe, we'll do it. It really is a trade, you know. You're getting a value. You're getting a value. I could make it subscription only and charge for all of this, but, you know, I'm trying to get to as many people as possible, and this is the best way to do it so far, right? So thank you guys, and love you all, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.